Hello everyone, and welcome to Buckethead. This is a Star Wars podcast where we're going to be talking about, pretty much everything to do with Star Wars, from the movies to the TV shows, the video games, the comics, the novels. Anything's fair game when it comes to what I'm going to talk about on this show, as long as it relates to Star Wars. The first episode here, I'm going to focus on kind of introducing myself, and the best way I could think of doing that was by ranking all 11 of the theatrical release Star Wars movies to give everyone an idea of the kind of Star Wars that I like, how the movies all line up to me. So, yeah, that's going to be the primary focus of this first episode, but I do have a little bit later on to talk about concerning some news about The Mandalorian, and future episodes are going to be more divided based on the topic, so I may talk about multiple things in one episode, but we'll see how the show comes along. But first, before I get into the ranking of the movies, I did want to talk about my name, which you probably saw it, and at first we're going, what kind of a name is Buckethead? And, well, a little more about me is my favorite part of Star Wars. It has to be probably the troopers, just the clones, stormtroopers, and anybody that wears armor, like the Mandalorians. They just got some amazing designs, and I've always been a fan of the troopers, especially the clones, and their helmets, which, for those who don't know, which is probably a lot of people, because it's only mentioned a couple times in a few of the TV shows, but stormtroopers were called Bucketheads by Rebels. I think it first showed up in the TV show Rebels, which was used as an insult to stormtroopers because they're stupid, but it looked like they had buckets on their heads because of the way the helmets looked. So that's where it comes from. It's just my love for the troopers, people that wear the helmets, or buckets as they're referred to insultingly. So yeah, I embraced it as the title. I was trying to think of one, and I was like, what better name than the insult for my favorite types of Star Wars characters, the troopers. So yeah, that's where the title comes from. So it's kind of strange, unique title, but unique is how you get to stand out, I guess. So yeah, there's the origin behind the title Buckethead. So those of you who wonder, it's not me saying that I'm an idiot who's decided to make a Star Wars podcast. So a little background there. But yeah, and a couple more things before I start talking about the movies themselves is just lay down a couple of the ground rules for it. Number one, there's no Star Wars movie that I hate. There are things that I dislike about most of the movies, but nothing to make me go, this is a terrible movie. So yeah, I'm not going to be like bashing the movies because, like I said, I enjoy them all. And I'll talk about what I don't like. I've got a couple pros and cons for each movie, but yeah, you'll get to see kind of what I'm talking about as I go along. But also, as I said, this is just the 11 live-action movies, episodes 1 through 9, and Rogue One and Solo, because I didn't feel like putting in the other movies, because, I mean, the only ones I can think of are the Holiday Special, the 2 Ewok movies, and the Clone Wars animated movie, which I can say right now, those would all be at the bottom. So yeah, that's about all we've got for the intro, so we'll go ahead and jump on in. And first off, number 11, we've got Episode 2, Attack of the Clones. Now, it was hard to put this here because Attack of the Clones is more of a nostalgic Star Wars movie for me. It is the first movie to come out after I was born, but yeah, there's just a lot of things about this movie that make it lower than the others. But like I said, I still enjoy it. I still have fun watching it, and there are things that I do like about it. But just to knock out a couple of the bad things, I mean, most obvious is probably the whole Padme Anakin romance subplot, or not really a subplot, that's the main focus, and that's the problem. Is like half the movie revolves around this, and it's just so cheesy. But no, that's part of the, I guess, charm, if you want to call it that, of this movie. Is I don't know if I would really call it charm, but anyway, it's just something that has kind of stuck around as an aspect of the movie. And yeah, it's not my favorite Star Wars movie, as you can tell. It's at the bottom of the list, but just the romance is kind of cringy, or pretty cringy, but the dialogue is the same. Like some Anakin's things about ranting about sand and stuff, and beyond that, it's just as boring for most of the movie. Like pretty much everything not involving Obi-Wan is boring. Like all the Anakin Padme romance, all the political stuff that carries on from the Phantom Menace. But while there are those problems I do have, there are other things that I do like about it. Like I mentioned, pretty much everything with Obi-Wan is pretty fun. The stuff on Kamino is great. And as I mentioned earlier, the clone troopers are probably my favorite characters overall, like as a group. And Jango Fett is a Mandalorian. I love Mandalorians, so they make up for it somewhat. As you can see, it's still at the bottom, so they didn't make up enough. But it is cool to see Jango Fett introduced, even though he only lasted this movie. But the clones stuck around. We're in some more of the movies and in the TV shows, and yeah, we got to see Boba Fett, and Boba Fett is my favorite Star Wars character. I know he's kind of annoying as a little kid with his little laugh, but I still get to see more of my favorite characters. So, yeah. And also, the Battle of Geonosis I really like. The lightsaber duel with Anakin, Obi-Wan, and Dooku. Then the one after that with Yoda and Dooku. And, it's real action-packed. I just wish it lasted more than how it was like just the final part of the movie. And the rest of the movie is pretty much boring, like I said. But another thing that I did enjoy about this movie is the fact that we got to see more, or this is probably the best look outside of Revenge of the Sith at Anakin falling to the dark side. I say that. The only other movie with Anakin was Episode 1. He was a little kid, but getting to see Anakin, like, the hatred come out when the Tusken Raiders kill his mom, when he murders all them. It's just cool to get to see Anakin's development or downfall to the dark side. It helps bridge the gap between the story of Anakin to Darth Vader. So, yeah, that is pretty much all I got to say about number 11, which is Attack of the Clones. But next up, number 10, the movie right before number 11 is Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. So, The Phantom Menace, it's got a lot of the same problems that Episode 1 had, or Episode 2, minus the romantic part. It's just real boring. The politics are kind of drag on. And there's, like, little action. But, similarly to what I said about Attack of the Clones, that's part of the movie that you just have to accept and enjoy what you can out of it. And I will say, Jar Jar Binks isn't quite as annoying to me as he seems to be to a lot of other people. I actually like Jar Jar. He does have his annoying moments, but to be honest, he's nowhere near as annoying to me as C-3PO is. And little kid Anakin is probably a little more obstructive to the movie than Jar Jar is to me, just because it's a little kid. Oh, I don't know what that was. Being a little kid, then Jar Jar is just this clumsy alien, and Anakin got to be like the focus pretty much once we meet him. So it just kind of, I don't know, drags whenever a little kid, and like all those things like, I'll try spinning, that's a good trick, or whatever it is he said in the final battle. But as I said, with the cons come several pros. For example, the Duel of the Fates is one of the best lightsaber duels in all of Star Wars, and the music is great, the whole battle is great. Darth Maul, Qui-Gon, Obi-Wan, they're great, and that's throughout the whole movie, not just that part. I really like to get to see Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan. Wish we would have seen more of Qui-Gon before he got killed off, but yeah. But beyond from the Duel of the Fates and Qui-Gon, Obi-Wan, and Darth Maul, I also did like, and this was one thing I like about the prequels as a whole, is the world building that it provides, letting us see the entire world of the prequels develop into like this whole new era of Star Wars that was new at the time. And the prequel era is my favorite era. As you can see, 2 of the 3 movies are at the bottom of my list in terms of ranking, but that just goes to show how great that time period is. So, yeah, the Phantom Menace, Attack of the Clones, there are things that I do like about them. They're very nostalgic to me because, like I said, there's movies that I grew up with because I was a prequel kid, but they're just not as good as the other movies. So, yeah. So moving on to number 9, we have Episode 7, The Force Awakens. Now, it's easy for me to flip-flop this one with the next movie, but I feel overall I've got to put Episode 7 next, just because it's kind of, to me, when I think about what's the Star Wars movie I want to watch, every time I think of Force Awakens, it's kind of one that I'm like, I'd rather not watch it. Not because it's bad, it's certainly well made, it looks great, but it's just that it's a retread of Episode 4. Like, we get to find, like, here, let me line it up for you. So, Episode 4 starts with a young orphan kid in the desert, Luke, Rey, and then they find a droid with message for the rebels or resistance, R2 in Episode 4, BB-8 in Episode 7, and they meet up with the old hero from a previous war, Obi-Wan in Episode 4, Han Episode 7, then they go off on an adventure on the Millennium Falcon and eventually run into a scary guy with a black mask, red lightsaber, and find out the enemy has this giant super weapon that can blow up an entire planet or planets in Episode 7. And then they have to go in a big battle to destroy it, and our old hero from a previous war gets killed. So it's like almost the exact same story, just a couple things are different. It doesn't break enough new ground for me to want to watch it more. Like, as I said, it's a really well-made movie and looks really good, but it just not enough newness to give it a higher spot. And also, Luke is barely present. He has 15 seconds of screen time maybe at the very end when he just turns around and he stares. He doesn't even talk. So, yeah. But as I did say, it does look great. And what little we do get of the original characters, like we don't get Luke hardly at all. But Han, Leia, and Chewie are great. Especially Han. Like, this was kind of the tribute movie to Han. I guess he got the center focus, even though he did die. But, and also, the new characters, they're kind of divisive, I guess. People, either don't like Rey, don't like Finn, don't like Poe, don't like Kylo, whatever. But I really like the characters, especially Kylo Ren. He's probably my favorite of the new Disney era characters, at least from the sequel trilogy. And I just like his story, like him as a character. And yeah, I like the new characters a lot. And the setup was the main thing. Like, when I left the movie, I was excited for what was to come, excited for the next movie to get to see what happens with the characters. And yeah, it didn't necessarily go the way that I wanted to or thought it would, but yeah, that's pretty much all I got to say about Episode 7. Like I said, really well made, looks great, like the new characters, but there wasn't a lot more newness aside from the new characters and the new planets and stuff, so yeah. Then next up, at number 8, we have Episode 8, The Last Jedi. This is one that, Episode 8 is hard to talk about because there are a lot of things I did enjoy about this movie, but then a few things that I'm not crazy about that are relatively big things, which are the same things that a majority of the people that dislike this movie dislike it for, but I just feel like they maybe take it a little too much. Yeah, right off the bat, I'm not too crazy about how they handled Luke. It's unique and different and surprising than we thought it would be, or at least I thought it would be. And it's I'm trying to think of how to put it. It's definitely a bold move with what they did with Luke. Like, he ran away and went into hiding. But I just would have liked to see Luke in his prime, which we didn't get. And Luke didn't do much of anything in this movie. So, like he runs away when he almost kills Ben Solo instead of trying to talk to him about the dark side in him. He abandons the Jedi again, goes into exile like Obi-Wan and Yoda. And then, like, I feel like I would have even been happy if they did that, but then he came back to, I guess, quote-unquote, redeem himself by actually facing Kylo, showing his power through whatever way there, but he actually does show up. But then when he does that, he's just a vision. So I'm not like gonna go berserk because of how they handle Luke, because I can appreciate that they did something bold and unique, but it's just not necessarily what I wanted. But it did set up the story, and like I said, I like that it went in the bold direction that tried something new. Even though I don't necessarily agree with it, I could still enjoy it. The same thing with Snoke, and spoilers for the movie, but it's been out for 3 years almost now. So Snoke getting killed, like, took out the big bad that they were setting up, especially when Kylo is the one that did it. So it's like, where do we go from here? Kylo kills the main bad guy, but then and then we get to see Kylo was built up as the new bad guy, and then that all changes in episode 9, but I'll get into that later. But, Snoke and Luke are the main things. I wish that they were handled differently, because, like, they built it up. I was hoping for, like, a climactic battle between the two powerful Force users, Luke and Snoke, and then they're just handled completely different than I expected, and they're both killed off in this movie. So, also, the way Luke was killed, like, it felt kind of, I don't know, underwhelming, like, not the kind of death that Luke Skywalker deserved. Like, should have been, like, going out, like what I was saying, if he actually went to Crate, fought Kylo Ren, and died sacrificing himself, but he died because he, like, got exhausted. So, yeah. But enough of my rant about that. I've got other stuff to get onto with this list, but just real quick to sum up everything else about Episode 8. I didn't really like Canto Bight. It was all over the place. It didn't really feel Star Wars. And, like, all the alien creatures, they didn't look like Star Wars aliens. Like, I've seen things saying they look like Star Trek aliens, which I can see that. And it's just like a distraction that we really didn't need. But the things I did like I said, I do appreciate that it tried something new. Not necessarily something that I like completely, but I still enjoyed it. Everything with Rey and Kylo was great, and even the stuff with Luke, like I said, I appreciate that they went and tried something different with Luke. I don't want to keep saying that over and over because I've said it so many times now, but everything with Rey and Kylo Ren was great, and it looks great. Like, all the Disney movies, that's the thing, they all look great. So that's always a pro, which I probably won't mention anymore because I don't want to say it for every single one. Like, it's a pro, it looks great, but yeah. So basically, I appreciate that it took a bold step into a new direction, but I don't necessarily like all the decisions that were made. But I'm not going to hate the movie. I can still enjoy it and have fun watching it. So, yeah. Enough with that. I've kind of went on about Episode 8 a little longer than I thought I would. But next up, at number 7, we have Solo, A Star Wars Story, which was a movie that I felt got shafted too much. Like, a lot of people either didn't like it or had some kind of problem with it. But I enjoyed it because, it was a fun story that was, like, didn't have any big galaxy-shaking consequences. But, yeah, the problems, I'll go and get those out of the way because there's more things I do like. This is kind of the point where I enjoy, well, like I said, I enjoy all the movies, but this is kind of beginning to get to the area where there's not too many problems I have with the movies, but we'll go ahead and just go over things I didn't like. It does jump around quite a bit, like we're on Corellia, then we go to Mimban, then we go to where is it, Vandor. Then we go to, I don't even know, it just jumps around a lot, like planet to planet, which is good that we get to see a lot of different planets, but it moves around real quickly. But at the same time, that can also be a good thing. You get a lot of new locations, and it moves the story along. But the only other problems that I had with it was that it seemed kind of like a highlight reel, like the greatest moments of Han Solo. Like, Han gets his gun, he meets Chewbacca, he meets Lando, he wins the Millennium Falcon, he does the Kessel Run. He does all that in that short amount of time, which, I don't know, it's like really like all these important things about Han happen in like the span of 3 years, I think. Well, no. After he joined the Empire is when he met Chewie, and then everything else happened like within the same week. So, yeah. And also, the last thing, I can't help but feel like the way he got his name is so stupid. Like, he goes up to the Imperial officer, "What's your name?" "Han." "Han what?" "I don't have another name. I'm alone." He's like, Han Solo. It's like, haha. So, it's like, really, Han keeps the name that Imperial gives him, but it is what it is. That's like really the only things that bug me are everything happens so quickly and in the same week, and his name, the way he gets his name. But everything else, Alden Ehrenreich, who plays Han in this movie, I feel like he did a really good job as Han. He doesn't look or sound a lot like Harrison Ford, but he's able to portray Han in a way where it feels like Han Solo, a younger version of him anyways. And the way they did Lando, I enjoyed. Lando's droid was annoying, but no, Donald Glover played Lando in this, and he did a really good job. The actors that they got for Han and Lando were really good. I really enjoyed them. And like I said earlier, it's just a fun, inconsequential adventure. No worlds are hanging the balance, and it's just fun and moves at a brisk pace. So yeah, it's probably the most fun out of the Star Wars movies. Not like the other ones aren't fun, but it's just like you don't have to save the galaxy in this one. It's just going around on a little mission. So yeah. Then next up is episode 6. Number 6 is episode 9, the Rise of Skywalker. I keep getting the names and numbers mixed up. Goodness gracious. I will say right here, for those of you who have not seen episode 9, because I know it did just come out a couple months ago in December. It's been out for a couple months, but this is just a warning for those who want to avoid spoilers. If you haven't seen it or are waiting for it to come out on DVD, it comes out in a few days, I'm pretty sure. So if you haven't, there will be a bit of spoilers, so maybe skip ahead a couple minutes and see if we're past it. If it doesn't sound like another movie, then skip ahead some more. But so Rise of Skywalker, I seen get a lot of hate, but I've enjoyed it. I really liked it. People that I've talked to have really liked it, and there are just a few things that I have a problem with. So first off is that it throws you right into the action with like no explanation, like just the opening crawl, Palpatine's alive, and it's like, what? Shouldn't we have seen this happen? And then Kylo finds the Wayfinder, goes to Palpatine, and yeah, it's like we see Palpatine like the first 3 minutes of the movie, which I was not expecting, but it like puts you right in the middle of it. It seems like it seems like Palpatine, they should have hinted at that at the end of the last movie, which I don't even know if they had plans for Palpatine by then. They say they do, but I don't know. I have cause to doubt that, but yeah, and along with that, with no explanation, is just so many things happen without explanations. Like, and again, spoilers here. This is probably the biggest spoiler, I guess, for what happens, but like, we don't know how Palpatine came back until the novel came out. He's a clone body that his spirit possessed or whatever. Then Rey's dad is actually a clone of Palpatine, so is Rey actually Palpatine's daughter? I don't really think that makes sense, because like, if a clone had a kid, it wasn't Jango Fett's son. So Yeah. But other aspects of that, just they're explained in the novel, and then like the movie doesn't give a lot of explanation. Like Palpatine, the way he came back is the main one, but for me, I can avoid that, but I can see why people who don't really want to read the books or just look up stuff about Star Wars, why they're upset about it. I can see that. But the other problems I had is just that it was built up as having a lot of connections to the other movies, and it did have some connections to episodes 4, 5, and 6. Like, we got to see young Luke and Leia in the flashback where Leia trained. She got her lightsaber and stuff, but I feel like there were very few prequel connections, which, as I said earlier, the prequels are the movies I grew up with in my favorite era, and I just wish that there would have been more of a tie-in. Like, I know we did get the voices of Anakin, Obi-Wan, Yoda, Ahsoka, Kanan from Rebels, and then other Jedi from the Clone Wars and stuff, like Luminara and Dooley, Adi Gallia. But the main thing I wish we would have seen was at least seen Anakin's Force Ghost, but also Obi-Wan and Yoda. Because, I mean, we saw Yoda in Episode 8. I just wish we would have seen some of their Force Ghosts in this one as well. And also, again, if you stuck around, because spoilers, that I don't need to be saying this for everyone, but this is probably the last big spoiler I'll mention, but Kylo Ren turns to the light side, and he dies, and we don't get to see Ben Solo's ghost, which I wish we would have seen his ghost and Anakin, Obi-Wan, and Yoda at least. But I'm still glad we did get somewhat, at least their voices, but yeah, not quite what I wanted, but again, I'm happy with it. And another thing that I want to mention is Anakin's legacy. That was the thing that I was most worried about, that Rey killing Palpatine would kind of erase what Anakin did, and because Anakin, his whole story was he had to come back, defeat the Sith by defeating Palpatine, which he did in Episode 6. But then Episode 9 rolls around, Palpatine's alive, which it kind of explains that away, like Anakin saying, "Bring back the balance," as I did. Which kind of explains, like, and Palpatine did say he has died before, so technically Anakin did kill him and brought balance, but he brought balance and balance got unbalanced again. So, yeah, it's a little confusing. I'm not quite sold on it, but I guess it works enough where Anakin doesn't seem like a failure, like I was worried he would. And also, last thing, there were no big in-game consequences. Like, it was just, oh, Palpatine's going to take over the galaxy again. And no tie-ins. Like there were a few things. Like, Wedge Antilles shows up. Nine Numb shows up, which I guess kind of because, like, pretty much everybody's dead. Like, no prequel characters really could show up because they're all dead, basically. The original trilogy, all their characters are dead. Like, Han's dead, Leia's dead, Luke's dead. But we did at least get, like, Lando and Wedge and characters like that. But now onto the pros. Kind of going on and on with some of the sequel movies, but the pros I have for the movie, it kind of is like in between, I feel, with Force Awakens and the Last Jedi. The Force Awakens was, what's the word? Criticized because it was too close to the original trilogy, and The Last Jedi was criticized because it was too different, which I feel like The Rise of Skywalker is able to stay in a middle ground. It has a lot of things that are callbacks to the original movies while also doing something new by bringing back Palpatine and, like, this quest for all these different things, which it kind of gets a little complex and stuff, but it does make it for a fun, fast-paced adventure, and it does wrap up a lot of loose ends, like Palpatine, I guess, is finally dead, even though he was until 2019, but that gets wrapped up. Rey's parentage gets wrapped up. The story of the Skywalkers gets wrapped up. What's another one? Kylo Ren's story arc gets wrapped up. A lot of things get wrapped up here, but and we also do get proper goodbyes, I guess, for the original trilogy characters. Like, we get to see the Force ghosts of Luke and Leia at the end, and we get to see, technically not a Force ghost, I don't know what it is, like a manifestation of Han's spirit, but it's not a Force ghost. We get to see that, so we get some proper goodbyes to our original trilogy heroes. And my favorite character, as I mentioned earlier, Kylo Ren from the new movies. His story arc gets finished as well. And I do appreciate the callbacks and tie-ins we got to the prequels and even the TV shows, like with Ahsoka and Kanan showing up. But, you know, my basic summarization of episode 9 is, like, when I talk to people about it, it was like a solid ending to the sequels, but maybe a little disappointing of an ending for the saga as a whole. Like, I enjoyed it, but it's not quite what I wanted it to be. So, yeah, that's the long story short for episode 9, even though I gave a long story already. But, yeah, we'll move on to now number 5, which is Rogue One, a Star Wars story, which the only con that I really have is the first few acts kind of move along slowly because, like, stuff on Jeddah. But pretty much once it gets to Mustafar, we get to see Vader for the first time. Pretty much there until the credits, it's action-packed and fantastic. And, like, there have been several times where I just been like, man, I just want to watch the last third of Rogue One, so I'll just go to Mustafar and watch the rest of the movie. So, like, everything they do with Darth Vader is perfect. Like, the last 30 seconds is phenomenal. Or, not 30 seconds, probably, but, like, last minute or two. Everything with Vader there is great. Perfectly ties into episode 4. And the new characters I really liked, especially Krennic, K2SO, and Chirrut. And just so much stuff about Rogue One is great. And it's definitely, to me, the best of the Disney movies. And it has potential to move into number 4. But I just don't... I felt like I'd be kind of sacrilegious if I had it take the place of what's at number 4. But, yeah, so Rogue One, like, not really any complaints other than it moves slowly at the beginning. But, well, I guess we'll jump on now to number 4, which is actually episode 4, which people may be surprised by, that the original is at number 4. But, yeah, the only reason why it doesn't get higher is the story, to me, seems kind of simplistic, like evil bad guys capture Princess and try to blow up a planet, which, I don't know, it just seems kind of like a generic story, which it's expanded upon later. More unique stories are kind of added, I guess. And it does start out slowly. Like, whenever we meet Luke and stuff, it's kind of setting up for the world of the original films. But there are so many great things about the movie at the same time. Like, when we meet Han and Onward, it's great. The final battle at the Death Star is great. We get to meet so many of these classic characters that have become fan favorites, like Luke, Han, Leia, Chewie, R2, C-3PO, Obi-Wan, Vader. So many characters. So, and I mean, it started all of this. So, yeah, part of me feels bad for putting it here, but it's just where it falls for me. And also, last thing before I move on, the lightsaber duel is terrible. They just move around hitting their lightsabers together like they're sticks, and it definitely improved the lightsaber duels. But yeah, episode 4, I really like it. Like, I feel like I'm being too harsh with it, but I still really enjoy it. It's just my least favorite of the 3 original films. So yeah. At number 3, we have episode 6, Return of the Jedi, and nothing jumps out at me really as like a con. Like, it kind of takes a little bit of time to go from, like, it starts out with the rescue mission at Jabba's palace, and then it just jumps to the final battle with the Empire. So it kind of seems like 2 entirely different stories. Like, it's like they forgot to wrap up one story and had to fit it in with the actual conclusion. But they did a good job tying it up, I feel. But, like, I mean, it offered the perfect conclusion for the original 6-film Anakin Skywalker story. Wrapped up Anakin's story perfectly. Like, we get to see his redemption from Darth Vader back to Anakin. And, as I said, the entire final battle sequence is fantastic. Like, the ground stuff on Endor, the space battle, and then Luke's duel with Darth Vader, which is it's slowly become one of my favorite lightsaber duels. Like, the music is great, and the emotion that has is really good. So, yeah, episode 6, it's my second favorite, as you can tell, of the original trilogy. But it just doesn't move up past the top 2, which the top 2 is real hard. They flip-flopped in times past, but I feel like my solid defining ranking of them, number 2 is episode 5, The Empire Strikes Back. And I know this is what most people say is their favorite Star Wars movie, but for me it's second favorite. But, I mean, it has all the twists that have become, like, engraved in Star Wars, like, I am your father, all that. We get to see characters like Boba Fett, who, as I said, is my favorite character. We get to meet Yoda, Lando. It builds upon the character story, and it's just a great continuation. And, you know, all the twists for their time. I wish I could have been around the time whenever you didn't know Darth Vader was Luke's father. Get to experience that for the first time. But, yeah, it's just a solid movie. My favorite of the original trilogy, but not quite my favorite of the saga, which you probably narrowed it down by now, is episode 3, Revenge of the Sith. So, yeah, this is the first Star Wars movie I saw in theaters, and it's the one, like, I was hyped up for it. I was getting the new action figures that came out. I was excited for this movie when it came out, and it did not disappoint. And as I've gotten older, it's still stuck as my favorite movie. Like, it looks great, even for being now 15 years old, which I can't believe. It looks great. It's got a tragic story, wraps up the original 6-film story, the George Lucas movies. It completes the story of Anakin Skywalker, which we already technically got the conclusion, but it fills in all the gaps. I wish we could have gotten more of, like, the Clone Wars stuff. That's, like, I guess the only flaw I have. Like, this movie easily could have been 3 hours and I'd still enjoy it. There's just so much about this movie I love. Order 66 is great. Everything about Palpatine manipulating Anakin to turn to the dark side is great. And it completes Anakin's story, and which what may be my favorite lightsaber duel. Like, it's hard to say. My 3 favorite lightsaber duels probably have to be episode 3's between Anakin and Obi-Wan, the Duel of the Fates, and episode 6 lightsaber duel between Luke and Vader. But this one is just so great. It moves so fast-paced, and the emotional weight that it carries is great. This movie is just... I feel like I could sit here and talk about episode 3 for a whole episode of this at some point, which maybe I will, but just overall, my favorite Star Wars movie. I don't think that will ever change, and yeah, I just love everything about it. So, yeah, that's kind of my rambling ranking of all the Star Wars movies, which I just realized this has gone on for much longer than I thought it would, but hey, it's the, I guess, pilot, I guess you want to call it that, for my podcast, Buckethead. So, yeah, that was the ranking of all 11 Star Wars live-action movies. So, yeah, let me know, like, wherever you guys hear this from, just comment or whatever and say, like, give me your ranking, the differences that you have with mine, and we can discuss. So, yeah, I hope you all enjoyed this, which I just remembered my other topic for this, which I've only got a few minutes left, but just a quick overview of some news that recently broke concerning Mandalorian casting news for Season 2. So, I'll give the first two, like, and also there are potential spoilers here. I don't know why this would be false. Like, it just seems to be true to me, but there's always a possibility it could be false. But first off, Bill Burr, who played Mayfeld in one episode of Season 1, is going to be coming back in Season 2, which I liked his character. He's like the only one other than the droid from that group of bounty hunters that I liked. So, glad to see him come back. And also, I don't know how to pronounce his name, so I'm sorry if I butcher it, but Michael Ben, or however you say it. He was in Terminator and Aliens. I've never seen it, so that may have to do with why I can't pronounce his name. But he's set to appear as a bounty hunter as well. Those come from Deadline reports that he's going to be coming, or they're both going to be in this. So, yeah, but also the bigger name that's coming is, as I said, potential spoilers, potentially false. So you've been warned. Is Ahsoka Tano supposed to appear as a guest star in an episode of Season 2. I'd assume she'd have something to do with Baby Yoda, his story, but yeah, I'm a little optimistic, cautiously optimistic, I guess. I'm wondering how big of a part she's going to have. I feel like it may be kind of forced, but I hope not, and I can't really speak about it because you don't know too much. I trust people in charge of The Mandalorian to make good decisions. So, yeah, and it also could potentially fulfill the quotes from Bob Iger, who was Disney CEO when he talked about this, but he's no longer. But he said that characters would appear in Season 2 that would potentially get their own spin-off shows, which I don't know if any of that's changed since he said that, but who knows, maybe Ahsoka could potentially get her own live-action series. So, yeah, but as I said, take that with a grain of salt. It could be true, could not be, but we'll see. So, yeah, that most of the time of this episode was taken up with ranking the movies. So, this will probably be longer than most episodes, but yeah, I hope you all enjoyed. I enjoyed making this first episode. Let me know what you thought. If there's anything that you'd like me to talk about, do differently. So, yeah, I also want to give a shout out to the Weems Empire who helped sponsor, bring this to you. So, thank you to them, or him. I don't think anyone else is associated with him. So, yeah, thank you all for listening. Hope you enjoyed it. And I'll see you in the next episode. Thanks for listening. Goodbye.